Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, where we're reaching the end of the year now, where people are starting to look back at the year that's gone past and looking at what they've achieved and what they didn't achieve, and also create new goals for 2019. Many will say the dreaded words, "New year, new me," but then give up as soon as the year started. So I wanted to try and solve that problem. And one of the most common emails I get is, "Neil, can you help me launch my own podcast?" But the tech stuff scares me. Now, occasionally, I also see people making those same mistakes again and again and again. So once again, as it is that time of the year, I've opened up the doors to my virtual podcast launch program, where the deal is pretty simple. You work directly with me, and I promise you that you'll launch in January 2019 with your own podcast show and a season of 8 recorded podcast episodes. In a nutshell, you or your business focus on recording an interview and leave all the editing and all that technology stuff to me. That way you can start 2019 with something really tangible, a real result, your own podcast, not just a list of actions. So if you do want to find out more on that, head over to podcastingmadesimple.info if you'd like to spend some quality time with yours truly. But I don't blame you if listening to my voice in your ears with one podcast per day is more than enough from you. You can have too much of a good thing, right? Now, I'm not saying I am a good thing. I better move on swiftly. Now, a few months ago, I spoke with the CEO of Iqor, and they're a managed services and solutions provider for some of the world's most well-known technology brands, such as Microsoft, DirecTV, and Apple. But there has been a few changes at the company, and I wanted to get back in touch with them to find out more about what they've been up to and where they're heading. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Memphis, Tennessee, so I can speak with Connie Long from Iqor. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Connie. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Good morning. So my name is Connie Long, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Iqor. And our company is a tech-enabled BPO service provider. I personally look after the North American section of the company, and we have locations in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It's a pretty exciting time for us because we actually are taking our technology and product services and blending them together. And I was very fortunate to host here in Memphis, Tennessee, our first center. So pretty cool.
Fantastic. Incredibly cool and incredibly exciting time for you guys. But if there is anybody listening to us talk here that's just new and hearing about Iqor for the very first time, can you just set the scene and tell me exactly what it is and what problems you solve for some of the brands that you help out there?
Sure. So inside our businesses, the portion of the business that I help manage with an amazing team is we look at the service logistics portion of the business. So if you were to go to a store and buy a device and for some reason have to return that device, it would come back to a partner such as Iqor. We would take those products, bring them inside the house, and depending on whether it was in warranty or out of warranty, we would do a number of activities. We could just receive the product and return it back to the original manufacturer that's engaged with us, or we could go through some processes for cleaning and screening and testing. We provide information upstream to the client base and also back into the OEMs. So you'd be surprised. We do everything from mobile devices to entertainment devices, home thermostats. We look at things such as even a build to configure a device that helps our cloud computing customers. So a very wide range of devices. We also do some global sourcing for our business partners, people who don't necessarily want to have all of the overhead associated with the business. They come to partners such as ourselves who obviously have the backbone of experience and relationships.
Now, on this podcast, I do love sharing tech startup stories, but for me, it's not just those tech startup stories, but it's the very human stories behind the success that really intrigues me. So can you tell me a little bit more about your background?
I was born in Canada.
Yeah.
I started off my role in finance and IT in a manufacturing environment with a global company. So I fell in love with operations and electronics along the way. I've been in the U.S. for about 13 years, and currently the team that I help manage is comprised between the three company locations, probably around 4,000 to 5,000 people. And I love people, and I love technology, and I love putting the two of them together and coming up with some great solutions that actually fit our customer portfolio, but more so cut the environment that we live in. So I'm not necessarily an activist, Neil, but sustainability is beyond recycling for me. So it's taking the two worlds of customer product, employee engagement, and making the right decisions. So I'm not sure if that helps you, a little insight into Connie, but...
No, it really does. I'm curious, where did that side of you come from? Because I love how you've got the two different aspects there and you've fused them together to really make a difference. I love that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. So I spent the first 10 years of my career in international tax, believe it or not. And because it was highly invested manufacturing companies, I spent a lot of time in research and development and manufacturing and processing. And I think that's where I fell in love with operations, because I understood that, in order to make the numbers, you had to understand the process. And because I was so vested in being on the floor, it moved me into a financial role. And from the financial role, I realized I really wasn't the person who needed to do the journal entries and close the books. I really needed to be in the action. And the action was clearly with the engineers, working with the folks in the production format, looking at Lean Six Sigma, and then sort of threading a story together that supported the initiatives that we were trying to reach. However, along the way, I was heavily involved in two environmental situations in the previous company. And I think it embedded in me that we had to be socially responsible for our actions, which meant develop tools that solve the processing process but don't leave an imprint that's going to be carried on for generations in a negative way. So when I work with the customers now, I talk to them about not only how the products work in the environment to service the needs in which they're trying to market to, but how responsible are we doing that? Automation is amazing, Neil. However, it comes with a cost, and how are we bridging that story? So, and I'm still only 25, of course.
You and me both. And you mentioned that about automation coming at a cost. And
yes.
Are you noticing, because there's a lot of scary horror stories in the press that automation is going to remove lots of jobs, but actually I've got an alternate view that it's actually going to free us up and allow us to add more value into business and take away those robotic tasks, those mundane tasks for us, so we can concentrate on bringing more value to businesses. But unfortunately, there will be businesses that just see it as a cost-saving exercise, won't they?
Yeah, and I think, some of the things that we've been able to do really well. So we have the home simulation lab within our facility. We also have a failure analytics lab, and the failure analytics lab was first. And that was just understanding how the performance of the products would work compared to the specifications that were designed for the fit and function. And then what we found is all of these devices kind of got out into the environment, and then they really aren't hitting the performance specs that you're expecting them to do. So I've got this great group of folks that I work with, and we said, how would it be if we set these devices up inside the house and actually did some simulations? And that kind of got me thinking, well, how do you marry the failure analytics with the home simulation? So we have adopted predictive repair and common repair, which then, of course, helps with utilization of labor and gains the efficiencies that, from a corporation we're looking for, and helps give us the price models that our customers need. But then it added the sustainability portion that I was more excited about from an individual, because how can we now take all of that data analytics and harness it to say, when we're building these products that are going to give us this extra time in the marketplace and, creativity space that we can kind of think about because something else is doing it, how do we actually then look at things and address questions and understanding of our precious metals? How are we utilizing our electricity? Can we incorporate sort of that full circle of life back into it? So, and you can't do that if you're spending all your time, running on the track. So the automation helps free up some of that time where you can have maybe a little bit more of a creative view of where the industry is going and how you can be a part of it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was going to say as well, maybe it's worth highlighting that at Iqor, you do work with some of the world's largest technology companies, including Microsoft, DirecTV, Apple, and so many more. So what kind of challenge are they facing in a new mobile digital world? And how are you helping them turn them into opportunities? I think it'd be really valuable for businesses of all sizes listening that they're not alone in this.
Oh, no, not at all. We have a really unique relationship. So with the brands that you just discussed, we actually work in behind the scenes with the OEMs. So folks that are actually building the product. So we do a lot of design for serviceability. And, you could talk about 5G, which is, on the forefront of being released, and a lot of excitement about that. What we still see is how are those products going to be able to continue going to market and service the needs of that's not there yet? Things like transportation, medical, smart cities. So all of these products that are being released by those big brands, they're all struggling with how do they continue ramping at the speed in which the industry expects without having the complications of the disruption of the service in behind. So I think that's where partners like ourselves who work at both ends of the ecosystem between the original manufacturers, the design for serviceability, the testing and network stressing that we're doing inside our labs to ensure that as they're going to market, they've got a good service provider that's got their best interests at heart. We've said for years, our product is service and our strength is people. And then your home is the location where you're trying to bridge those devices within the communities. It's an exciting time. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and I tease people all the time about, what device did you see back in the day that doesn't currently exist right now? Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's anything. People will say, well, there's no teleporter. And I'm like, well, we got 3D printing. That's taking a item and sending it through an electronic device and materializing at the other end. So I really feel like these companies that are on those forefronts of whether it's automation in autonomous vehicles or asset tracking in the medical fields, that's where we have a sweet spot. We're eager and excited, and we've got a tremendous group of people that want to serve. I guess that's really what it comes down to. We want to be a part of the story in a healthy way.
And please tell me you've been in a meeting at some point where somebody gave a fantastic suggestion and you've just used the line, make it so.
Pretty much every day. I got to tell you, every day. They tease me a lot. So we have a couple different service devices. We have what I call our technology room, and that's my holodeck.
Oh, man.
The holodeck, these are service devices that are open in the market that don't cost a lot of money. So basically some projectors on the ceiling that allows us to create the visual presentation of the walls into whatever schema we need it to be. And I actually infuse smell into the room depending on the audience. I lower the temperature in this room so that when you first go into the room, you're going to feel a very difference, usually colder. And then we use some of our customers' products in the home environment to change the lighting schema. And the only thing I'm doing in that room is providing an experience. I want people to go into this room and to be infused with their senses so that you can get them into a point of talking about creativity. And I don't think in business we do that a lot. We tend to talk about products and cost and time to market. And what I'm hoping is folks that come into this room have an experience where they engage their entire being to say, what is this product going to do when it gets to the market? And then we're the supplier that's kind of got all the technical side of it, but really addressing the entire homogeneous person. So that's my holodeck,
How cool is that, though? Eh?
Well, it is. And, it really takes people off beat. I think a lot of times folks come in with an expectation, and we really pride ourselves on exceeding those expectations. There was nothing that I sold to them in that room other than providing them with a pleasant experience that they can then refer to their friends and family to say, hey, man, I was in a holodeck, and I tell them that. And then I tell my engineers, here's the next stage. We have a concept layout center where we take the individual company products, and I've purposely set up different workstations with the team to have extra play in the lines, being data lines and electrical lines, where the next step is to do these simulations in that technology room that goes back into that concept layout where we build the solutions together. A lot of times people will say, well, you're the expert, you should know all this. And I may be the expert in this particular findings, but I want to build this with you together because I feel that that's the best way for us to help you go to market. If they fully understand what we're doing behind the scenes, I believe we build a stronger, more viable solution for the end user.
So it does seem to me that you're more than just a traditional business process outsourcing provider, but rather one as taking both its customers and yourselves through the digital transformation in parallel. What have been the biggest lessons that you've learned on that journey, and do you share similar challenges and opportunities along the way?
I guess the biggest lesson I've learned is one of the struggles, even, we can sometimes see it in our own company, is the larger the business, the more disconnected the internal operations are. And while it might be the right business decision, it's extremely difficult because you're not working with all of the people who have the ability to, sign the dotted line in a change or a format forward. I'm hoping with the digital technology of information that wall gets lowered, literally, where there's more of an open communication where people understand their interdependencies. We've spent so much time trying to get our data analytics to, provide robotic solutions and give us throughput and efficiency. I'm hoping that the next stage that we enable our business contacts is to see that it's a partnership, which means it's open transparency, whether that's a device or whether it's a business solution like blockchain. But I think that we still struggle with that in the industry. And I'm really hoping that the next generation isn't just about how quickly something goes over the line, but how quickly I was able to use it to improve, the overall well-being.
So looking to the future, are there any other big changes that you see on the horizon? And do you think things like blockchain, you did mention it there, is that something you'll be looking at adopting, or is it much too early to even talk about that yet?
There's definitely applications for software transparency. I don't know in our current business model if that's something that would be used across all of the platforms. Some of the devices, you can kind of get into discussions, do you need to always be on the cloud? There are certain applications where you need to have the speed of the connectivity within the location of where that device is being used. And I think it lends the same thing on the blockchain. There's been a lot of momentum of everyone sort of outsourcing to the cloud. And I remind people, you understand that is a place. It's not in the air. It's not in the outer atmosphere. So things that we're doing is doing a lot of work on understanding how to connect internally our information to our devices and to our individual employees. So, and that's a real challenge, even in today's environment, that's still pretty tough. We have, optical scanners, and we do predictive analysis, and we have cosmetic criteria that we can have our cameras review. But until I engage with the individuals who get us as inspired, and I mean everyone from the person at the security gate to the point of the shipping point, they all have to understand. And I think that's where we as a company and industry still have some opportunities.
Now, the business landscape is moving so much faster now. It's moving at breakneck speed, so much so. And since the last time that I spoke to somebody at Iqor, you've now had a change of CEO, and there's been a heap of other changes as well. So can you tell me a little bit about those changes in 2018 and just how much has happened? Again, it seems like an incredibly exciting time for you all.
It is. We had the fortunate ability to have some single leadership that had been, our guiding father for a long time. And recently, Gary Presnick was announced as our new CEO. And Gary has a tremendous amount of experience in the industry. And what's interesting is he's now leading us for both the product service side of the house and the customer interactions. With that, we have Marta Lethio, who is my current business partner, who also joined in a new leadership role. So the division itself has got some exciting times ahead, just with, a new view, maybe, but with enough experience to keep leading us down the paths in which we need to be successful in.
And another question I've got to ask you, I think I read somewhere that you're a huge soccer fan, and for my UK listeners that are going to shout me down for saying that, I do mean football, of course. But you started your own league. I'm curious what put you into that world, and does that help in the business world as well?
Oh, absolutely. So, yes, absolutely love the game of soccer. So let me start off by saying Canadian, and I do say soccer. So I was living in Canada, and I found that there was a need for competitive soccer players who had reached an age where the game wasn't necessarily at the top. And me and another friend created a over 30 women's league in the town which we lived in. Again, it was seeing a need in the marketplace and then developing a platform. So we started off with about I guess we maybe had around 24 people. And by the time I had moved into the U.S., I believe we had 8 full teams, and we had all kinds of fun stuff. And, it taught me that there may have been a time where everyone was at their optimum level of play, but, the market changed on them, their bodies and their family commitments. And you couldn't necessarily go out there and be the starter anymore because you're still trying to start breakfast for the kids at home. And what that did is it changed how I looked at business. So, when I look at the devices that come in, I constantly challenge the team. This device may have an end of service life that's targeted for 18 or 24 months, but what are we going to do with it? And what that's done is it's helped us look at maybe some harvesting opportunities or scrap. And if you scrap, how does that is it done responsibly? Again, pretty big sustainability initiatives within our organization, and understanding that it may not fit the function in which it was provided in the first place, but is there something else that we can still do with it? And, that's the challenge I throw to the group constantly. There's hundreds of thousands, millions of devices out there, and how do we continue being responsible to ensure that we're making the right business decisions? So,
and as we run towards the end of 2018, one of the big trends I've noticed at all the conferences I've been to and a lot of the guests on this show is the trend towards customer experience, and how experiences are now even more important than the transaction itself. And I did notice that you guys were celebrating Customer Service Week recently and focusing on improving engagement, motivation and productivity. So is that something that you're really passionate about too?
Very much so. We have a very lively behind-the-scenes motivation group that focuses 100% on our employees. I recently took a group of our internal managers to a art music event called Artrageous. And what I try to do is ensure that our teams are, one, having words of affirmation. Let our employees understand that they're important. It could be something as a recognition of a service deed or high performance, but then also provide some platforms that engage with the community in which they live in so that they understand, show something that they've never would have thought of going to gets offered up, because the creativity that can bring back into the workplace with the enthusiasm is really important to us.
So as we look towards 2019, is there anything else you can share with us about the future of Iqor?
Hear us roar is probably the biggest thing I'd leave it with. We have continued to focus in on where the industry is going and the customers and the needs. And behind the scenes, we're constantly adopting new ideas and new solutions. So I would say 2019 is an exciting time, just thinking about the autonomous industry of cars and, smart cities. We're right there and we're ready. Bring it on. We want to be a part of it.
Fantastic. Well, a huge thank you for spending the time to come and talk with me today. I'd love to get you back on next year and see how you're getting on there, and especially all the insights that you've got from all these different people you're working with in the world of autonomy as well, because it's just going to grow and grow and grow. But more than anything, just a big thank you for coming on. But before I do let you go, could I ask that you provide your contact details for a member of your team if anybody listening wants to reach out and contact you guys?
Sure. I can definitely send that over. So it's Iqor, IQOR.com. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter. The group that we have, Robert Burke is sort of our managing director. As far as marketing, I have an amazing business associate by the name of Blake Graves, who helps me every day in, day out. So, both are more than open. And then if there's specific questions, please it's connie.long@iqor.com. If I can't find you the answer, I'll find someone who does.
Excellent. Like I said a few moments ago, there is a big focus on experiences at the moment. And what I love about what you guys are doing is you're helping some of the world's best known brands transform every customer experience and turn it actually into a competitive advantage, which is a fantastic thing. So a big thank you for coming on today, Connie.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Connie was so much fun to speak with today. There were a few bloopers on this episode too, which have thankfully been edited, all for your listening pleasure. So a big thank you to Connie for being amazing and professional throughout. I learnt so much today, and Iqor are so much more than just a traditional business process outsourcing provider, rather as one that's taking both its customers and itself through the digital transformation in parallel. So I thought that was a fantastic story. But I'd love to hear what you thought. So email me techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, or pop by my website techblogwriter.co.uk/podcasts. And of course, if you did want to know more about the podcast launch program that I'm running at the moment, that's over at podcastingmadesimple.info. But that's it for me today. I've got so many guests lined up today, and I've got a lot of editing and a lot of recording to do, so I'm going to get out of here, and I'll see you all bright and early tomorrow. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.